the Honorable Leon E. Panetta, Secretary of Defense, accompanied by the host and co-host, the President of the United States, Barack H. Obama, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin E. Dempsey.
John, let's... All signs out.
You are betraying democracy when you assassinate suspects. You are betraying democracy.
If the Capitol Police will clear the room, please.
John Brennan is still in favor of extraordinary rendition. He was third in command after the CIA drove Hunter. He never spoke out against it. You are traitors and you should have been. You are traitors to democracy.
Please clear the room. Please clear the room. All right, I think we should clear the entire room and only let people back in. What do you think? I think they're not going to...
I just see it. Well, we need more Capitol Police is what we need. Well, we need more Capitol Police is what we need. Well, we need more Capitol Police is what we need.
Yeah, let's okay, we'll try and start. Begin this hearing, and let me say right up front that the process is that people are respectful, that they don't cheer, they don't hiss, They don't show signs that this is to listen. If that's a problem for anybody, I ask you to leave the room now, because what we will do is remove you from the room. Let there be no doubt. So, if I may, I would like to begin. The committee meets today in open session to consider the nomination of John Brennan to be the 21st Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, to have risen through the agency's ranks since Bob Gates.
I speak out on behalf of the Constitution, on behalf of the rule of law. I know we are killing with our drone strikes in Pakistan and in Yemen and Somalia.
In this fight, we are harnessing every element of American power: intelligence, military, diplomatic, development, economic, financial, law enforcement, homeland security, and the power of our values, including our commitment to the rule of law. That's why, for instance, in his first days of office, President Obama banned the use of enhanced interrogation techniques, which are not needed to keep our country safe. Earlier this year, Attorney General Holder discussed how our counterterrorism efforts are rooted in and are strengthened by adherence to the law, including the legal authorities that allow us to pursue members of Al-Qaeda, including U.S. citizens, and to do so using technologically advanced weapons. Technologically advanced weapons. Technologically advanced weapons.
Hello, United States activists and citizens. We are anonymous. On Monday, February 27, 2012, another oppressive act was enabled that allows for the limitation of the right to free protest for all U.S. citizens. This bill, known as the Federal Restricted Buildings and Grounds Improvement Act of 2011, also known as H.R. 347, was passed in secret and has not entered mainstream circulation. This bill is one of the most outrageous and oppressive bills that any of us has seen to date. It allows for the detention, apprehension, and arrest of any citizen that is protesting in the nearby vicinity of a, quote, secret service protected official. The reason for such is due to, quote, disruption of official government activity. Over the past few months, with SOPA, PIPA, and DAA, and ACTA, it is becoming clear that the system that of which has claimed to offer liberty and freedom for hundreds of years is now completely overrun with corrupt officials that want to disrupt the only method the people retain to challenge their authority: protesting. Anonymous knows that the government is corrupt and has been slowly oppressing freedom. However, to the very extent
hope will only come now when we physically defy the violence of the state. All who resist, all who are here today, keep hope alive. All who succumb to fear, despair, and apathy become an enemy of hope. They become, in their passivity, agents of injustice. If the enemies of hope are finally victorious in this nation, the poison of violence will become not only the language of power, but the language of opposition. And those who resist here today with nonviolence are the last thin line of defense between a civil society and its disintegration.
I've been out of the military now for 2.5 years, and I've been speaking out ever since. And today, I just felt that it's time for me to take a stand. You know, risk arrest, whatever, with my brothers and sisters. Why today? I can't sit idle anymore. I can't. I just can't. I can't sit by anymore and let these atrocities continue.
Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Baltimore. In a recent New York Times article, we were given a rare glimpse into the decision-making process that President Obama uses to come to decisions about who he's going to order killed. That is, drone attacks against what are supposed to be al-Qaeda targets, and collateral damage obviously included. Now joining us to talk about this one-man star chamber is Ray McGovern. Ray's a former analyst with the CIA and now very active in the anti-war movement and whistleblower movement. Thanks very much for joining us, Ray. Ray's in Washington.
Glad to be here, Paul.
So what do you make of this extraordinary piece about Obama?
Well, it is extraordinary, and the question is really why the administration would cooperate in putting out the word that they have kill lists, that they gather together 100 or so of them, and they pick out people to put on the list, and then they give it to the president, and the president says, yeah, we'll zap this guy and zap that fellow, and why would they brag about that? I think it's symptomatic of the continuing sentiment in this country that says, well, you know, if that's keeping us safe, you got to do it. And Brennan, he's a tough guy. And look, he's a priest.
Okay, tell us who, a lot of people may not have read the article, so tell us who Brennan is and give us the basic picture.
Yeah. Well, Brennan is...
John Brennan, right?
John Brennan is a CIA reject, okay? He couldn't make it as an analyst at CIA. And he got a job as one of the briefers down at one of the secondary levels of the White House and ran into George Tenet. George Tenet was working at the White House then, soon to become deputy director of the CIA and then director. And Brennan impressed Tenet. And knowing Tenet, you could imagine that Brennan impressed him by indicating that he would do pretty much anything Tenet said. Long story short, Tenet got back, deputy director of the agency, moved Brennan up to be chief of station Saudi Arabia, and then back as his chief of staff, and then as deputy executive director. In other words, he moved him several rungs higher to make him one of the most influential people when Tenet was deliberately corrupting the intelligence to, quote, justify an attack on Iraq.
Okay, let me just jump here for a sec. For people that haven't read the Times piece, the reason we're talking about John Brennan is acting as a principal advisor to President Obama on who gets killed. And in the article, it talks about Brennan almost being like a priest, giving a sort of moral authority for President Obama to make these kinds of decisions. So go on, Ray, with your background of John Brennan.
Well, Brennan has got this aura about him that he's not only a tough guy, but he's a moral guy. The head State Department lawyer, Coe, says that Brennan is just an extremely scrupulous person, and it's just really terrific to have that kind of person as the last person to see the president before the president gets a whole bunch of people killed. It's quite extraordinary. That's not those words, but it's exactly what this article says. So Brennan rules this roost here, prepares the list. And Obama says, yeah, we'll do number 1, number 2, and then 3 and 4, I suppose, move up to 1 and 2. It's extraordinary. Now, why would the administration allow 30 of its highest officials to cooperate in this? I think they still think that Obama needs to appear tough, that he's doing this job against terrorism, and he's making the country safe. Whereas in reality, this is creating more terrorists. It's just a matter of time before this comes home to roost. Every drone that kills a family has 100 people that are sworn to avenge that family's killing. So that's the extraordinary irony of all this. And yet Obama, at least for the next several months, is going to appear really tough. That's why he told his people, cooperate with the New York Times.
So
let him tell the whole story.
So let's get clear on the process. The intelligence agencies, I guess, they make recommendations as to who they think are these kinds of enemies that need to be killed. And the president has makes essentially a decision himself. The New York Times says how he's taken personal responsibility for making the final decision. And then he orders these people to be killed. And they do these drone attacks knowing there's going to be a certain amount of what they call collateral damage, which means innocent people in the area are going to be killed by the drone attack. And the president can then make this decision all on his own. But it seems like there's kind of no due process. There's no any sense of judicial process of any sense. They're just based on intelligence reports deciding such and such person deserves to be killed. The president's doing it, as I said in the beginning, it's like a star chamber. They just make their own decisions and off they go. I mean, do I have this right?
It's extraordinary. You know, George Bush, when he was asked about torture by Matt Lauer, he said, well, the lawyer said it was legal. And, you know, I depend on the lawyers. I don't second guess them. Well, you have the same kind of lawyers now. I call them consiglieri, sort of mafioso lawyers. And I'm talking about our Attorney General, Eric Holder. I'm talking about Ho at State. These are people in the tradition of Ashcroft, Gonzalez, Mukasey, the people that preceded them. And what they've said is, oh, Fifth Amendment, it doesn't, it says due process, but that doesn't mean judicial process. We'll give it due process right here in the executive branch. and Holder goes out to Northwestern Law School, explains all this, and all those budding lawyers sit around and say, oh, so due process doesn't mean the judiciary has to become involved. Give me a break. It's really quite remarkable. The whole, you know, the Justice Department has been corrupted to a degree I've never seen before. And so they say, well, from a legal point of view, go ahead and do it now.
I mean, it's really interesting, the kind of progression of what's being established. First of all, they're saying if it's outside the United States, the president essentially can order the killing of anybody he wants, and it could be an American citizen or not. There's no issue of any kind of process at all. But then the idea is, oh, this only happens outside the United States. But then they have this NDAA amendment that allows indefinite detention, and now it includes in the United States and American citizens, essentially just on the authority of, again, who? On the authority of the president. They can simply say we can detain anyone we want. So we've now moved inside the border, and I guess how big a leap is it to then say, well, maybe we can do these extrajudicial killings inside the United States as well, if we think someone's bad enough?
Well, this is Dick Cheney on steroids. It's the executive having all the power that it wants. And yeah, you know, I thought it was Lieberman, Graham, Lindsey Graham, Carl Levin, McCain. I thought it was that little cabal that put together this National Defense Authorization Act provision, which said they could use the Army to come in here into this studio, grab McGovern, send him off to Guantanamo without charge, without trial, not forever, mind you, but just until the end of the War on Terror, okay? Now, the president signed that toward midnight on New Year's Eve. And the question is, why? It came out that it wasn't just those senators. It was the White House that insisted that U.S. citizens be included in all this. Now, why? I think, Paul, and I said this a couple of days after, I mean, you may recall, I think they were afraid of us. I think they were afraid of the Occupy movement. And I think they thought that they couldn't really depend on the Park Police or the Capitol Police or the D.C. Police or the Secret Service down in Cartagena. There aren't enough of those. We need to be able to call in the Army in case Congress and the White House get surrounded by 80,000 people. It's that blatant. Now, why would Occupy grow to such numbers? It may not be coincidental that Lieberman, Graham, McCain, Levin all share one other very important thing in common. They are all incredibly pro-Israel.